welcome the big man in the business, Mr. Rodney Small. Yes, man, the CEO CDC.
Pleasant good night. Pleasant good night. Big up,
Yo,
Saint. Always a pleasure being here. And I mean, I'm a bit tired, but I'm here. I mean, always happy to be here having conversations with you guys. You know what I mean?
I couldn't do the thing. Hey, me, I cannot do this thing without Rodney Small.
Yeah, man. It's a
Yeah,
love.
yeah, man. I was up till 2 o'clock in the morning getting the videos, them and things. I said, nah, I have to
Right.
run with this. So, hey, you was there. You helped organize. You tell us. You tell us from the
I
start
mean,
to the finish.
yeah, this was not any easy task, but I am happy for the way it ended. And I mean, and I think St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we needed something like this because over the past month or so we've been seeing a lot of negatives in terms of the crime situation. But this actually started about approximately a month ago. And I mean, Speed and his team reached out to Skinny Fabulous, Gamal Doyle, his government name, and basically trying to get him to see how he can not only just be a host, but conceptualize it and put it together because Skinny Fabulous is a known person that they know, that they're familiar with. And after Skinny and Speed team having a conversation, they said to Skinny, well, we would need a producer, so a production manager, somebody to help put together the creative part of it. And I mean, based on the conversation Skinny and I had, Skinny said, yeah, don't worry yourself. I have somebody, man. We have somebody in Simmons who can do this. I mean, and he reached out to me and he's like, Rodney, I have a project for us to do. And he explained, I mean, I honestly didn't really know who Speed was or the extent of what Speed is all about. So I quickly started to do some research and Skinny told me, these are some of the ideas I have from myself as Skinny Fabulous. These are some of the things because people take it for granted. Skinny is more than just an artist and a promoter. Skinny is well in tune with our culture, and he didn't just sing that song this in his mind for singing its sake. And I mean, this man really love Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, and he shared what he had in mind. I look at what Speed was all about. I look at what is practical and what is realistic, and of course, start putting together the creative direction. Skinny then reach out to the government of Saint Vincent and Grenadines, of course, um, through Daniel Vera, I mean, the press secretary to the prime minister, and I mean, just to get the government involved because obviously there would have been some governmental stuff that would have been needed, and I mean, just to make it collective and holistic, and I mean, the government and the private side of things in terms of Skinny being private and coming together, and yeah, um. The first draft of the entire production was sent to Speed team, and they kept doing tweaks and they kept asking questions. Now, the most beautiful thing about this, I mean, not beautiful, but the most important thing about this is that Speed Team had this document, right? A very big document that you have to populate and put in information. So on every single day, they would go through it and look at it and say, all right, no, take this out. Okay, this look practical, this don't look practical. We can work with this, we cannot work with this. So every single night I would go back and check that document to see if there's anything they didn't like, if there is anything that they didn't change. Um, we had a series of meetings because one of the things that they were very keen on is seeing photos, location, and description about every single thing that we wanted to do. Right? I want persons to understand that. So, for example, if we have Saint as a DJ, they want to see pictures of Saint, they want his social media handles, and they want a description of what he's going to do, the songs he's going to play, who wrote them, what year they were released, and all these things. So it wasn't just I think that just happened. I mean, a lot of thought went into it. So we did couple drafts of that production guide, and then of course the Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Culture, Honorable Kishon Shallow and Mr. Cupid, they then obviously decided that listen, well then we need to pull everybody together, all the players involved. Let's pull everybody together and start meeting, right, and start conceptualizing and start finalizing and stuff like that. And then even these two ministers came with some of their ideas too, because quite naturally the Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Culture would have their vision for how they want to market St. Vincent and the Grenadines and what they would want to showcase to the global market. I mean, and without a doubt, with all of us in the room, Skinny Fabulous, myself, Daniel Vera, and the two ministers, the permanent secretary, Timira Brown, I mean, we start coming together and something started to look like it. Yeah, we get in there, and then myself and Skinny were in constant communication with their production team and their producer because, as I said, things keep evolving as you go along. You got to be able to speak their language, right? You got to be able to speak their language, or else, I mean, you're gonna look stupid, right? And then one night, I mean, around 11 o'clock, we had the meeting, and he's like, St. Vincent so far has the best document. And I won't lie, I got very much emotional saying because we're a small little country compared to the Trinidad and all the other countries that he's going to. And to hear he said that so far, St. Vincent have one of the best documents, made me feel good, made Skinny feel good, right? Um, then moving on from that, the Monday, I mean, the money was just something just totally out of this world. And before we got to the money, the Minister of Tourism and the Minister of Culture called a meeting with all of the heads of departments because obviously there are ministries who would have to be involved directly. I mean, AIA have to be involved, police have to be involved, the Ministry of Agriculture have to be involved so that everybody could be on the same page. And directly after that meeting, I had a meeting scheduled for 5 o'clock with all the performers, over 150 performers. I'm sure persons saw the long list of credits and persons who are thanking. Then after that meeting, we had an 8 o'clock meeting with the final core team, which is again the two ministers, Skinny, myself, Danny Vera, and the permanent secretary. And while we were there fleshing things out, Skinny and I got a call where they were saying, okay, 70% of what you have, we need to scrap it. This is 8 p.m. the night before the actual day. And we there like, no, Skinny said, nah, Rodney, this is stress. I'm stressed. What we going to do? I said, all right, Skinny boy, let's us talk it through. Let's brainstorm. So everybody in the room and we're brainstorming. We went back to them. We're trying to convince them that, listen, we already mobilized people. We already mobilized things. We really can't cut some of these things. All right, we'll call you back in 15 minutes. Then we started to brainstorm again, all of us in the room. And then we say, you know what? We're not going to cut things out. We're going to try to relocate a lot of things. So what person saw on the Tuesday Saint wasn't really everything that we wanted to do or where we wanted to do them. We had to relocate a lot of things. And I mean, we never left that particular office until 3 a.m. the Tuesday morning. 3 a.m. the Tuesday morning. Every single person who was in that room stayed in that room until 3 a.m. in the morning. Right? Then we finally got them to agree to certain things. Then at midnight, I was calling persons, listen, we have a change. I'm going to move you to this. I'm going to move you to that. The ministers were calling. Skinny was calling. And I mean, and we all was just, listen, guys, we have to do this for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And no matter what, we're going to get it done. Then the morning, we had a conversation with them again. And then again, one or two little changes. Because remember, they were moving around, eh? They were going to different countries. And he was in St. Lucia before St. Vincent. Then, of course, we were watching St. Lucia and we realized that, no, the time is going. Because we already had a scheduled time. Performers were already at their location, waiting since 12, somewhere there since 12, somewhere there since 2. And, persons were getting antsy and frustrated. The entire country was saying, why you staying in St. Lucia so long? You know what I mean? And I went to Skinny House and I said, Skinny, one thing I know about Vincentians, we operate very well under pressure. Right? Skinny was saying, but boy, this. The ministers kept calling, checking in to see how we're feeling. And you know what I mean? While that was happening and we were looking at what was happening in St. Lucia, we started to make adjustments because we realized that obviously he would have been tired coming over to St. Vincent. And then quite naturally, there are some things that we would have to do on the fly. And there's some things we would have to probably get rid of based off of the momentum and the vibe when he landed in St. Vincent. And something just came over us and I said, you know what? St. Vincent and the Grenadines is not going to disappoint us. Right? We are a country, we are a people who operate good under pressure. You understand? We've survived anything, so I don't think this is something that we cannot survive. When the land and the energy and the momentum, Saint, I said, yes, we have it. Then I listened to the interaction with Skinny. I said, okay, yes, Skinny sounds very comfortable, so we're going to be all right. You know what I mean? And then, of course, Chowder, one of our hosts, even Chowder himself was already pumped up and said, listen, this is St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We're going to show them what we're made of. And then I was a part of the advanced team because he had an advanced team. And every single thing was happening on the fly. On the fly. Okay. All right. We're going to spend 10 minutes on the boat instead of 15 minutes on the fly. Everything was on the fly. Everything was on the fly. And of course, St. Vincent and the Grenadines did not disappoint because the energy of our people is what really made us forget about every single thing, every single challenge that we were going through. You know what I mean? And I mean, the entire team, we kept communicating. We had intercoms, we had radios, we had cell phones. So, you know what I mean? Everything was, and the most beautiful thing about it is making the right call. And Vinci people have to understand that. You know what I mean? You always have to have somebody who would make the right call, who would seek advice and who would seek